It's my pleasure to introduce Joshua Tallent, who probably most of you have seen if you've been at eBook Craft. But Joshua is an ebook production expert, industry activist, including committee work with the Independent Book Publishers Association, BISG's Content Structure Committee, and a regular presenter at conferences, including Digital Book World and eBook Craft. And he is the Director of Outreach and Education at Firebrand Technologies.
So, again, my name is Joshua Tallent. I am Director of Outreach and Education. Basically, that means I get to talk to people all the time about really cool things and do training for people who use our software. Firebrand Technologies is a company that I work for, has been at the intersection of publishing and technology for almost 30 years. And the information I'm going to share with you today is gleaned from that history of dealing with metadata, of dealing with publisher problems and issues, and trying to help publishers really help publish their books in a more effective way. I'm going to assume something today that all of you are metadata people. You know metadata. If that's not true, I need to know that now. Is anyone here completely lost? If I say the word Onyx, you have no idea what Onyx is. Very good. Okay, we can move on from there. I will try not to put you to sleep after lunch. There is a little bit of XML code in my presentation, but I promise it will be very light and easy, and I will explain what's there, so it won't be too bad. My goal today is to show you some examples of how the publishing marketplace is evolving, to give you a deeper understanding of how metadata affects your business, and to bring some practical examples and advice that you can actually take home and start using tomorrow, or actually Monday, I hope, in your publishing business. So I want to talk about a major metadata trend that we've been seeing at Firebrand that really affects publishers, specifically the increasing complexity of sending metadata out to different retailers and other trading partners around the world. So let's state the problem first, and then we'll talk about it in more detail. Most publishing companies send metadata out and assets out to the entire list, for their entire list, to all of their trading partners, regardless of what those partners really need. How many of you do this today? You send out an Onyx feed to basically everybody. Everybody gets pretty much everything, or mostly everything. So this is a pretty common thing. It's true for publishers. It's true for the partners that publishers work with the most, and also for the ones that they're not likely to work with much at all. So the question is, why do we do this? Why do we send out essentially everything to essentially everybody? Because it's easiest. We often only have the choice of doing that, and the technology is only there for us to be able to do that. We should always be looking for ways to increase our technology abilities, though, and to really improve publishing and the technology that underpins it. So if a major publishing house sends out 200,000 titles in their Onyx feed every single week to every partner, that's not efficient. It's just not. It causes delays in the efficient processing of that information, and it's wasteful for the time and energy both of the publisher and the trading partners. Ultimately, this affects discovery and the ability to sell your books across all the different platforms that you want to. In order for a partner to filter out those titles from a large Onyx file, they must scan it and figure out which ones of those titles they want to sell, which ones of those titles they are able or allowed to sell, and then pull out and cherry pick the ones that they are able to and put them up for sale in their system. And that includes when you're sending out updates to your metadata, because they have to compare your list with their list and make sure that they are updating the fields that are new. For example, a children's book retailer probably won't care about your adult trade fiction. They don't care. They don't want to sell it. They don't need to get it. And getting the metadata just makes it more difficult for them to process. And why would you send your print book metadata to your audiobook retailer partner? It just doesn't make sense to do that. An even more important example for Canadian publishers who are looking to sell in other countries is the complexities of territorial rights. So if you have the rights to sell the book in the US, in the UK, and Canada, then why would you send out that ebook's metadata to a partner, a publisher in Australia and New Zealand? So we'll talk about this actually in a little more detail a little later. The answer to this problem is slicing and dicing. This is a major trend that we're seeing publishers adopt more and more. Slicing and dicing your metadata means sending only the metadata and the assets that you actually need to send to a partner to them. Slicing and dicing provides two major benefits to the entire supply chain, to everybody, not just to you as a publisher, but to retailers and everyone else in the supply chain. One is protection. Protection from accidental misuse. What's the best way to prevent misuse, such as selling an ebook in a territory where you don't have the rights or don't have a contract? Well, the answer is don't send it to anyone who sells in that territory. Once the title is sent, once the information is out there, it's very difficult to get it taken down. So it's actually easier to just not send it, and that's where slicing and dicing can help you. A second benefit of slicing and dicing your metadata is efficiency. Again, in order for a trading partner to filter all the titles from your Onyx feed, they have to process that file. And that takes time, and it's not easy to do with hundreds of thousands of titles coming in every single week from thousands of publishers around the world. Slicing and dicing your metadata makes you an easier partner to work with for that trading partner. They're going to say, oh yeah, we got that metadata file from XYZ publisher. They're great. All that data is exactly what we want. Let's just put it right in the database. Because they know that you're working to keep the data only to what they actually need. They don't have to filter it. They can just put it straight into the database and send it right through. So it also leads to more timely file processing. If you're trying to update your prices across all of your list, and you're sending out everything, including the updated prices, you're actually making it harder for your partners to update that information. So let's talk about one of the more prominent examples of slicing and dicing that will help you as a Canadian publisher or a US publisher to expand your sales, and that's specifically targeting metadata for different markets. So the trend in both ebook and print books today is to publish internationally, often with the same ISBN. And that coincides really with the concept of an international standard book number, right? The ISBN is supposed to be an international number. It's supposed to be usable everywhere. And this is a departure from the past when it was nearly universally assumed that a publisher would do a local co-edition for their book with a different publisher and a different ISBN. It's just a different process. And a lot of times publishers today are actually going overseas with their books, their print books. They're not selling through a co-publisher. They're not selling the rights to anybody else. And they're keeping those in-house and making the sales themselves. And this is even more pronounced in the ebook market, where delivery is much simpler than print, and the contracts often allow worldwide rights. So translations are easy, obviously, because when you have a translation, it's a different ISBN already. You don't have to worry about that side of things. But the metadata for your book that's written in one language, but sold to retailers or sent to retailers in different countries and with different cultures may require some customization. And this is where slicing and dicing becomes very important. So this also applies to other areas, not just to the data itself, but let's dig deeper into what kind of data. Things like your subject categories, where different standards are used in different countries, whether it's BIC or BISAC or THEMA or even something else. Descriptive copy should be really different and can be really different depending on who you're targeting. What's your target audience and what is the culture of that audience? What do they understand and not understand? And your print specifications. So if you're using imperial standard or metric standard, it's going to matter to the retailer what version of that they get because they're going to go off of whatever standard is normal for them. And even the Onyx capabilities or lack of capabilities in that country or with that retailer will come into play in determining what information and how to give them the information the best way you can. So let's look at an example of this in action. In this example, we see an important reason to differentiate your metadata by market, where local references mean nothing to foreign markets. So this book is a book by Luke Wynn, a celebrity in Australia with a TV show on SBS, the special broadcasting service. And you'll notice, I don't know if you can see it up there. So it says he has an immensely popular TV show on SBS. And if you're in Australia, that means something to you. If you're somewhere else, that makes no difference in the world. You have no idea what that means. So in a foreign market, we would want to give a different book description that does not provide a reference to a specific TV show, which means nothing to the readers in that market. So in the example sent to the UK, for example, you might say, this is an extremely popular TV show. Who cares about SBS? We don't have any reason to even know what that means. So you're changing the book description based on the market that you are sending the data to. We also want to consider how author information is written, so information about the author, whether that's the bio or anything else, and be sure that it's understandable in the target market. So for this same book, you do the same thing. You change the author bio and the information that's sent out about this author to target the markets that you're selling the book into. It makes a huge difference in what people understand and how they understand that data. So here's an example of how this can work in a metadata management system. Different metadata is collected for different markets, and then it's only sent out in the Onyx fields and Onyx files for the specific retailers or markets that you're sending that data out into. Obviously, this can be done in a variety of different ways. This is how we can do it in title management. There's a lot of other ways you can do it, depending on how you create your ONIX files. So it's also important to collect and send correct subject categories. I mentioned this before, for your title. BISAC is in the US and BIC is in the UK, theme is in other places. Or more specifically, you may have to give something that's specific to the retailer. Some retailers kind of like their own thing, and they would prefer that you give them that. So whenever you're sending different metadata for the same ISBN, we need to be able to be careful about which partner receives which version of that. How do we share the common stuff and then also target and share the customized metadata at the same time? We need to be specific by partner whenever possible. And this requires automation. You can't do this on your own. I do not, how many of you, and just for a show of hands, how many of you actually manage your metadata for your publisher? You're part of that process in some way or another. Okay, those of you, keep your hands up. Those of you who are doing that, how many of you actually write ONIX code on a regular basis? Yeah? Right, you actually are building ONIX code. So a couple of people who are building it, are you doing it because you like to or because that's the process that you have to do? Small edits. Okay, so you're not actually writing it, you're actually generating it somehow in another platform and then fixing it, tweaking it, and then sending it out. Is that right? I hope no one in this room is actually writing their own ONIX feed. Yeah, it should be automated. And honestly, even tweaking it shouldn't be necessary. It should be completely possible for you as a publisher to put information into a database, hit a button, and have the ONIX come out the way you need it to come out. The automation is going to become more and more and more important. And slicing and dicing your data to send it out to multiple retailers across multiple countries is going to actually make your job harder if you're doing anything manually at all. So again, this is about the sophistication of metadata management in the modern publishing marketplace. Things are getting more complex, not simpler. And we have to consider how the complexity of the marketplace affects our ability to sell our books well. Now, there's a proposal, just so you know, to add territory-specific descriptive fields in ONIX 3.0.3. So the new version, the next revision of ONIX 3 will have, there's a currently discussion and debate about saying, this is our description for the UK, here's our description for Canada, our description for US, whatever, territory-specific. The problem is that retailers won't support that when it first comes out. I mean, right now, less than 10 retailers, major retailers in North America actually support ONIX 3. So it's not like we have a ton of support right now for ONIX 3 in the first place, much less the latest revision that's going to have some special code that's really cool to have. So again, slicing and dicing your data comes back on your shoulders. Automating that process is really important. Another example of targeting your metadata by market is how you specify different countries and currencies and prices for those countries. So currency changes may be too volatile for you to really set a price for a specific title in a specific country. It may be easier, actually, that instead of setting an actual conversion price, so we're going to, we're a Canadian publisher, we're selling in the U.S., let's sell in U.S. dollars, so we're going to put our U.S. dollar price in our metadata. It may actually be easier for you to put your Canadian value for that, Canadian dollar value for that in your metadata, and let the retailer do the conversion for you. Doing it that way is actually an interesting way of approaching the issue, because then you can take into consideration the cost of shipment, you can take into consideration market conditions, and also currency volatility, which changes on a more regular basis than you might like. So for instance, let's say you're selling your title in Mexico. You may send a conversion price in Canadian dollars that's different from the MSRP that you would sell to a publisher or use for a publisher in Canada. And the purpose of that is to offset the difference in exchange rates. Or in Australia, you know that it's going to cost you more to ship your product to Australia, so you offset your cost in Canadian dollars again in your ONIX feed, and send that data as a higher Canadian dollar feed and let the Australian publishers convert that into the right price for you. International sales are complicated. They're really all over the place. In a perfect world, if you had a full rights statement in your metadata, that would be properly used by all of the retailers across the world. But that's not how it works. You can put your full rights statement in there, and retailers will completely ignore it because they don't look at it, or they don't care, or they care but they don't have the tools in place, or whatever. For example, you may want to sell your books in an online retailer that sells ebooks in a lot of different markets, but your contract with that retailer only covers the US, the UK, and Canada. So this partner may completely misread your rights statement that says worldwide rights and think that they can sell it worldwide, even though their contract with you is only for them to sell it in the US, the UK, and Canada. So it really has to do with not just your rights, but also the rights of the book publisher, of the book retailer. Another complication, some partners interpret the existence of a currency as metadata to sell the rights in that as sale rights for that country. They may say, "Oh, look, they've got a currency for British pounds. I can sell it in the UK." They don't even look at the rights statement in the Onyx file. They could care less about that. It has a British pounds in the Onyx file. That means you can sell it. So this may really require sending only currencies for a partner where they have the rights to sell. Instead of just giving them everything, again, only give them the currencies that they are allowed to sell in. At Firebrand, we call this international rights calculus. And it's just as hard to deal with as calculus was in school. Yeah. This is the calculus, the calculation between book territorial rights, so your rights as a publisher, and partner territorial rights, the rights of that partner, both in your contract with them and also where they have the ability to sell even. So if you have the rights to sell a title in a specific list of countries, and your partner has stores or the ability to sell in a separate list of countries, the differences between those lists can be fairly large. And you have to be careful about those differences because it's on you as the publisher when you're sending out your data to track that and make sure that you're sending them what they actually can use. This is a common issue really with ebook contracts especially. Maybe you can sell the Kindle ebook in Canada and the US, but not the UK. Maybe your contract doesn't give you that right to sell in the UK, but Amazon will probably try to sell it there if you give them that ability in any way. Essentially, trading partners don't handle rights the way they should. It's really what it comes down to. And you have to manage these rights, and you have to ensure that your trading partners adhere to them. So let's talk about a couple of examples. So in our first example, we have a partner called Commonwealth Books. This is a fake partner just for the sake of clarity. Commonwealth Books has partner rights in Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. And you as the publisher have world rights. You can sell this book anywhere. You do want to send Commonwealth Books this title information because you have world rights and they have the right to sell in certain countries. But you want the metadata rights statement in the Onyx file to not say worldwide rights. You want your metadata rights statement to say you have the right to sell it in Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. That's it. Not world rights, not worldwide. In a perfect world, again, you would put your metadata together and say worldwide rights. We have the right as a publisher to sell this everywhere. And you would expect that retailer, Commonwealth Books, would only sell it in the place where they actually have a contract with you. That's not the case. You have to be more specific. Another example. You have the title rights in Canada, the UK, and the US. Royal Books, your partner, has rights in Australia, the UK, and New Zealand. Where's the intersection? Anybody? UK. The UK is the only intersection. You do want to give them the information. Sorry, calculus, it's a little hard, huh? So you do want to give Royal Books your title information, but you want the metadata rights statement in the Onyx file to only say UK. Example 3. You have title rights in Canada, the US, and the UK. Ozbooks has Australia and New Zealand. Anybody? No. No, do not send them anything. Don't do it. There's no intersection. And again, this is where automation comes into play. Being able to slice and dice your data up and say, we have this book, it has these special rights, we have control over these territories, we can't sell it through this retailer. We're not going to send them anything. We'll send them the other data for other books that they actually can sell for us. So, as with all standards, Onyx is not always followed the same way by every retailer. It's just not. In addition to all of the slicing and dicing that we've been talking about, retailers all over the world do things all different ways. They want things in different ways. They want to see things in different information packages. They want to see data in different ways than you're even probably aware of. So at Firebrand, we track and we manage the different requirements of more than 430 retailers and trading partners around the world. And we distribute the metadata and assets to all of those retailers and trading partners, and we try to keep our Onyx files that we're creating for our publishers up to date all the time with the requirements and the special tweaks and quirks that are required by each one of them. Some retailers don't even use Onyx, right? Some retailers are like, Onyx, what's that? We like Excel. Give us an Excel spreadsheet in this format, please. And this is not just little bitty retailers far flung off in the distance. This is some major retailers, audiobook retailers, eBrary, Comixology, CreateSpace. There's quite a few retailers and trading partners based here in North America that actually don't accept Onyx. And so you have to be able to not only create your Onyx file, but also create all of those other formats as well. As a general rule, retailers are unique flowers who want the information to come to them in their own special and unique way. You have to create your Onyx files according to the retailer standards. And there's usually no written documentation either, right? You get an example Excel file. Yay! It's sometimes possible to get organic responses from retailers about the issues and the errors that they send back. But often you just have to ask them. You have to go to them and say, why did you reject my file? I don't understand. You sent me an error report that made no sense whatsoever. So I'd like to give you a few examples. I'm hoping that these examples will be really straightforward and help you in your creation of your Onyx files and your delivery of that content, the metadata, out to retailers. So I'd also like to give you a couple of hints about those retailers and how they handle the metadata that you're going to send to them. Let's talk about book descriptions. Always fun, right? Everybody loves book descriptions. Publishers are doing a much better job of filling out their metadata today. We've seen a trend in the last 5 to 10 years, especially the last 5 years or so, of publishers really making a difference in how much book description data they put into their Onyx feeds. It's very helpful to send out more information, better information, more well-crafted book descriptions. Descriptions are getting longer and they're getting better. The average length of a description has grown significantly since 2009. And as publishers are starting to add more information into their metadata, they're seeing a difference in their sales. So everybody's heard the story of Galveston, right? Simon & Schuster? Nobody? No? Okay, so let me tell this story. This is a great story. It's really, really important that you recognize as a publisher how your metadata can really make a difference in your sales. So Simon & Schuster had this book called Galveston, and the author was actually a writer on a very well-known TV show, right? Anybody know the TV show name? Really, serious. Nobody in this room knows this story? Did you miss Carolyn Reedy? Oh my goodness, I'm so surprised. Okay, so the... I'm sorry? Well, this is true. This is an American thing. Okay, so the writer of Galveston is a writer on The Walking Dead. And familiar with that TV show? Is that up here in Canada? You guys have that? So Simon & Schuster had published his novel, Galveston, a long time before, and they realized that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to take advantage of some of the great stuff coming through by this guy who's a writer. So they went into the book description. Literally, this took them 2 minutes. They went into the book description. They changed the description to say, from the writer of The Walking Dead. That's it. That's all they did. 37,000 more book sales in the next 6 months. And this was a book that was basically in their backlist, right? All it takes is understanding the information. All it takes is understanding what you can do to change that one little thing that's going to make a difference. And your book description is very important for that. So this really highlights the fact that your metadata is evergreen. And I can't emphasize this enough. It's actually going to come up again later. Your book metadata, your description especially, your author bio, all this information is evergreen. You have to come back to it. You can't leave it in the background and assume that it's going to be okay to just, that it's in the backlist. We're not going to worry about it. However, in addition to the marketing side of managing and refreshing your metadata, we also have to deal with the technical side. How do you actually get that metadata updated? Book descriptions are not always that easy to implement or to manage. So let's talk about a real-life example. On Amazon's website, The book description is displayed at the top of the screen, usually above the fold or somewhere close to it, depending on how they have their page design laid out that day. And usually has some sort of read more link that you can click on to expand that description down and show more of that information. Amazon also includes other descriptive metadata copied further down the page, including book reviews, interior flaps, author bios. They don't include tables of contents in the US or Canadian Amazon, but they do in the UK, which is really annoying. I don't know why they don't include the table of contents. They should. So this information, though, all of these different pieces of information, the description, the reviews, other pieces of data, all of it comes from Onyx and is inserted into Amazon's site as separate pieces of content. So if you go in and you put a bunch of different other text into your Onyx feed, a lot of times Amazon will actually pick it up and put it in there. Apple, on the other hand, as a unique flower, has their own metadata XML standard. They don't like Onyx. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but they don't use Onyx. So they have their own XML standard, and their XML does not allow you to include reviews or author bios or tables of contents or inside the flap or anything else. They have a description, one single field for description. So you as a publisher, when you're submitting your data to Apple, have to decide how you can combine all of that other text, all of that extra metadata into this one field so that it can all show up. You have to merge it somehow so that you can actually provide some sort of descriptive metadata that's more than just the book description. That's one of those unique things that you'll run into as you're sending your data out into the retailer channels. Since we're talking about them already, let's look at book reviews. How many of you use book reviews in your Onyx metadata? You send out reviews of your book? Yeah? Good. Let's note the difference between the different reviews that are broken out here. So if you look here, this is Onyx. Sorry for those of you who don't read XML, but I'll try. I will try really hard to help you see this. At the top there, we have the other text field in Onyx. And for those of you who are looking at this and thinking, numbers, who used numbers? I had a conversation earlier about that. This is the other text field, which is used for your book description. It's used for reviews. It's used for a lot of different pieces in Onyx and descriptive metadata. You'll notice here that there are a bunch of different reviews listed out here, all in one field, right? This is how you can do it in Onyx. You can put everything in one field. And a lot of retailers will take that information. And you can also do it like this, though, where you have one review, and you can even denote who the review was by, what journal or article or whatever magazine or whatever it was written in, what reviewer was doing it, and the date, even the actual date that the review was published. So you can split it out, or you can put it all together in one. If you do this, Barnes & Noble will actually show the information about that reviewer. So in this case, this is Attitude, which is a publication. They show it as a heading on their website, which is great because now if you separate all of your reviews out and do it all in the Onyx file as separate Onyx fields, you can actually have these little headings set up where every single one of them is kind of called out and really explicitly and looks really nice on the Barnes & Noble website. Amazon, on the other hand, just puts a little extra paragraph space between that and your other reviews. So in this case, what you're seeing here is that, basically just an extra line space between the review the list of reviews that this publisher included and that one review that they called out with Attitude. So you can still see that it has Attitude and the date down there at the bottom, but they're not using it as a heading like Barnes & Noble does. So different retailers will take the data that you put into your metadata fields, into your Onyx fields, and they'll use it in completely different ways. And the thing is, you have no control over what they do with it. The only thing you can do is figure out what they're doing and try to hack it or tweak it or give them something that they can actually do better with it. So let's move on and talk about author information. Author information is not really the author bio as much as it is other things. So let's talk about some of the other things. This is an example of how authors can be tracked and included for example, in our title management application. You can include a lot of information in Onyx about an author. So for instance, you can include all of their degree preferences, the degree references, sorry. I'm sure we all have preferences about what degrees we would prefer to be given, but in this case, Teresa Giralducci has actually earned the degree PhD, and you can put that into your metadata management system, and it should go out in your Onyx file, which is great, right? The more information you add about your authors, the more information can go out in your ONIX file, and the better off your metadata will be. Now, this is the ONIX record for that specific book that we were just looking at. Note that the ONIX includes the reference to PhD, right? So when we look up this title on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, we find that Amazon includes the suffix PhD, but Barnes & Noble and Indigo actually do not. They don't include it. Now, this is important because this is actually key to the functionality of their websites. It's not just about what it looks like and who, does it have a PhD at the end so you know they're an important person or not. It's actually more about the functionality of the website itself. This can lead to some really potential issues. If you click on the author name in Amazon, you get a list of the books written by that author. It does an automatic search for you on the Amazon website and shows you a list of books. In this case, it's showing us one book. This author is a brand new author. She's only written one thing. Well, the problem is that because Amazon includes that PhD in the search, it's only searching against books and titles that have the PhD in that author name. So if you go to Barnes & Noble and do the same thing, you get a whole list of books. Now, why is this? Why did this author have multiple books on Barnes & Noble and not on Amazon? Because of the way the metadata was sent. Now, in this specific case, it was because the author was only publishing this one book with the publisher in question and had published other books with other publishers. So this publisher had no control over other people's metadata. They only had control over their own. And they thought, well, we should include PhD because she has a PhD. It's good. But they didn't think about the ramifications of that when searching for this on other sites. And for, just so you know, Kobo does exactly the same thing Amazon does with the PhD. Click on the name of that author and it'll go to a search with PhD and you'll limit your search. So maybe you want it this way. I mean, if you're this publisher, you might want, this is great. I won't ever see these other books by other publishers. Yes. But maybe you don't, right? Really what you want is for every author to be able to have a full list of their books so that they can take advantage of that marketing. So if you search for the author name, though, in Amazon, just her name without the PhD, then you do come up with a full list. So the information's all there. It's just about the search. And again, this is a functionality issue. So you as a metadata manager, you as the person who is in charge of putting this data out there, need to make sure that you're thinking about how the data works and going and looking at it. After you send out that metadata out to the retailers, go take a look. Click on those author names. See what fields are actually being included on that website. Call up the retailer and say, hey, why didn't you include my author bio? Try to get more information out there and make sure that you're testing those things out. So one more example is the author bio. So we've talked about author information. Let's kind of broaden that out a little bit and talk about the author bio. In the last few years, we've seen an uptick in the number of publishers who are adding author bios into their metadata. And there are two different author bios, and a lot of publishers may not even realize that there are two ways of sending an author bio in ONIX. One is title-specific author data, author bio, and the other is author-specific author bios. So both are common, but they're used in different ways by different retailers. So let's look first of all at a book called The Smart But Scattered Guide to Success. This publisher included the author bio on the title record. So if you look at it, you'll see it's in the other text field, just like our description was before, right? This other text has a unique characteristic of being an author bio. So there's one of those code numbers up there, I think it's number 13, says, hey, this is an author bio, not a book description. And this author bio is going to show up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Indigo. All of them will show this on the page, the title information page on their website, which is great. It's what you want to see. Our other book example, though, How to Retire with Enough Money, includes the author bio in the author information section. So right along with the name of the author and the PhD and everything else, it's all listed there, and they had the author bio put into that place in their ONIX metadata. So that author bio is usually sent in Amazon to the author central page if there's one set up. This is the data that you would normally see on that author central page coming from this field in ONIX. It doesn't go to the title, though. It's not title-specific information in Amazon's case. So the Amazon page for this does not include an author bio, because this publisher did not include a title-specific author bio in their metadata. Now, what's the best practice? Best practice would be include both. Go ahead and make sure that you have both a generic author bio in your metadata that can be used by the retailer, and also use a title-specific metadata field as well. And in the case of the book itself, you want your book author metadata, your book author bio, to be more specific to the book, to really target readers who are reading on that information page about that book. Why is this author important for this book? Not just what did they do before, what is their background, but really why did they write this book? So I want to share really just one more example of the kinds of issues that you're going to deal with when you're sending your metadata out to retailers. Beyond all the requirements and the quirks of how retailers accept ONIX metadata, they're not always consistent about how they interpret the HTML code that is in that ONIX. So you can actually provide ONIX, HTML inside your ONIX for all these book descriptions and stuff. You can have HTML of different kinds. Basically, it's a small selection of HTML code. Italics, bold, those kinds of things. So, for example, the author bio in one of our example books, The Smart but Scattered Guide to Success, looks fine in both Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but Indigo has some issues. They apparently had some issues importing that ONIX file. Let me zoom in here for you. The italics have been removed from the code, as well as some spaces that were kind of important. So in addition to the issues there, also the bio of the second author of the book is also completely missing from this. So Indigo didn't process it correctly at all, and it just came through as junk, right? And the publisher probably hasn't realized this yet. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to go home and send them an email and let them know. But this is an important issue. While we're on the and you know, it's really important for us to recognize that retailers are not going to do what you expect them to. And part of our job is to go through and look at those and make sure that we understand what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, and fix it where we can in the metadata that we're sending out to them. So while we're on the topic of author bios, I would like to take an opportunity to drive home a point that I made earlier in this presentation. And that point is that your metadata is evergreen. So Teresa Elsie mentioned a great example of this in her presentation in eBookcraft yesterday. HMH went back and looked at the author bio for one of their authors, Elizabeth Gilbert. And the bio talks about her book, Pilgrims, and an award from 1998, and lists her current job and where she lives. It's a great little author bio, right? Pretty well written. However, that bio does not take into consideration this book, published by another publisher. And so the question, as Teresa puts it, is, do we include that in our author bio? Do we want to? Well, probably, just because of the sales that we can get from it. But you know, it is an important piece of information that probably needs to be added. So I recommend, highly recommend, that you keep your metadata up to date, that you consider the ramifications of new information and how that can affect and will affect your book sales. So, have I scared you all now? Are you scared yet? No? I tried with the dinosaur. The dinosaur didn't work? Are you scrambling to go onto your metadata management system and change that metadata that for your recent titles and look up some retailers and say, oh, how's that working? Let me boil all of this down to you with some recommendations that I hope will alleviate some of your fears and help you make your efforts more successful. First and foremost, automation is your friend. There is no reason for you to be managing your metadata in Excel. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm hoping that no one in this room manages their book metadata in Excel and hands those files between departments. Please don't do that. Or even some hack together homebrew access database or something else. It's just not necessary. Find a professional tool. There are lots of tools out there that will help you manage your metadata and automate the process of creating all that ONIX, slicing and dicing your data, sending it out where it needs to go, and making sure that it's done correctly. It doesn't happen by magic. It just happens by persistence and coding. So you need automation to grow. If you want to increase your sales, if you want to change where you sell your books, if you want to increase the market that you can, the markets that you can sell in, you have to have automation. So adopt automation now. Second of all, send more data. More information is better. Retailers need more information. And no, lots of them don't actually use all the metadata that you're going to send to them. I'm looking at you, Kobo. Anybody from Kobo in here? Sorry. Author bios don't appear on the Kobo website, apparently. But the more metadata that you as a publisher send to a retailer, the more likely they are to use that data. If all the publishers sent every single retailer all of the information they could possibly use, then retailers would kind of be forced to say, hey, this is good data, we should use this, we'll get more sales. So take advantage of the fact that you have the data and send it even though they're not using it. Chicken or the egg? Who should blink first? Who cares? Scramble or rotisserie, it's all the same thing. It sounds like dinner to me. Number 3, quality, quality, quality. This is probably the one thing that if you've ever heard me speak, I probably say this more than any other word in any presentation. Quality. It's extremely important. There's no reason you should be sending out, not be sending out high quality metadata. Think carefully about your book descriptions. Be proactive about writing copy that works for all of your target markets. Work with your editors. Work with people overseas in markets that you are trying to get into. Find out what the cultural norms are in that market and write your data, your metadata, your descriptions to those cultural norms. Don't name things that are useless to those cultures. Make sure that you understand not to use that word because that word is not very nice or whatever, right? And proof everything before you send it. Make sure that you've proofed it in your system and then go proof it again when it shows up on the retailer websites. If you see an issue like you saw on the Indigo with the italics being stripped out, go back and look at your metadata. What can you do, if you can do anything, to fix that? If you can't, call up the retailer and say, hey, hello, it's broken, please fix. File bug reports. Number 4, targets are for hitting, not for ignoring. Your target markets need to be targeted. Watch out for the language that's only understandable in one of your markets, eh? Sorry, it's my only Canadian joke in the entire thing. But you got to watch for it, right? Target your markets. Don't just ignore the markets and say all of our data goes out to everybody. Who cares? And number 5, your metadata is evergreen. Don't leave your backlist to rot. Make a concerted and scheduled effort to update your metadata on a regular basis to take advantage of new ideas, of cultural shifts, of recent news and information to generate more interest for your books. I would recommend that you set up some sort of reminder in Google Calendar or whatever you use to go back on a regular basis and look at books that have been published in the last 6 months. What's happened since then? What's happened in the last year? That book that's been sitting in the backlist for a year or two may actually need an update to its metadata. And if you go back on a regular basis and look at that, I know it's more work, but the sales that come from that are beneficial. As we saw from Galveston, you can make more sales when you keep up to date with your metadata. So that's all I have. Any questions? I've got a couple minutes, I think, for questions. Yes? No, so there's 2 ways to do pricing in your Onyx. One is to put in the actual price, the MSRP or MSR inside of.
Does that go in the database or into
No.
the system?
Well, there's 2 ways. So your database is going to send out your data however you do it, right? Most databases are not going to convert the prices for you. Usually it's the retailer who would convert the price. So if you give an American retailer Canadian dollar amount in the price field, they will convert it into US dollars for you based on current exchange rate or whatever it is. So it's 2 ways of doing things. It's basically a question of, do you want to send out data in one price that you have adjusted for your costs and for what you consider market volatility to be or currency volatility to be, and just have everything in one price, or do you want to break it up and send in different currencies? It's completely up to you. And there are benefits and pros and cons, and we can talk about that more offline if you want.
I still don't understand whether you're suggesting putting the extra currencies into the database. Sorry, I don't understand whether you're suggesting putting the additional currencies like euros, Australian dollars into the database, or should we have a function within the Onyx generating system for dealing with the extra currencies?
Typically what you have in the database is going to go into the Onyx file, right? I mean, if you put British pounds into your database, it's going to show up in your Onyx file. That's typically what the systems do. So my recommendation as to a publisher is, if you're going to sell in a market that sells in a specific currency, provide the pricing in that currency as needed. So if you're going to sell in the UK, then you probably want to provide something in British pounds or provide a territorial version of your Canadian dollar price for the British market.
But that means constant revision of your database for those currencies which are in fluctuation, like the Canadian
Potentially,
dollar.
yeah.
wouldn't it be simpler to have a mechanism which is adjusted to make the currency conversion at the time that the data goes out?
It's actually better for the retailer to be changing the currency pricing.
Okay.
It's
Well,
better
then
for
in
you
the-
to.
in
It's
the
better
long
for
run,
you to just set the price at the price that you know it's going to, the value based on what you're going to be using.
Would you say in your experience then that what we normally do is we have a Canadian price and an American price.
Yeah.
And when we send to foreign markets, we just send the American dollar.
Sure.
And expect
And let them
to
convert it.
do-
Yeah, and that's a good way to do it.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Any other question?
What kind of conditional, what kind of conditions can you set around author bios sending to different territories to make it appropriate for those regions?
Well, in Onyx itself, I don't think there's anything really you can do about that. Really, what I'm talking about with slicing and dicing is you, in your metadata creation, actually making separate Onyx files for those different channels, those different markets. Because retailers are going to take whatever you give them, and a lot of times their processing of Onyx is not going to be very robust. So what you give them is probably just going to be straight pulled into the database, more likely. So it's better to just give them only what they need. And so I wouldn't recommend having 2 or 3 author bios and trying to say this is for Canadian market, this is for the US market, this is for Great Britain. Just give them the one that they need for as a retailer.